Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 547th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today, we've got another old school sales professional, Jim Doyle. He is the author of a new book called Servant Selling Book. Pretty straightforward, right? I'm loving having these guys like Ben Gay III, having Jim on. I had, probably need to have him back, but old Tom Hopkins way back, episode 115, and Anthony Parinello. I've got his book right here, Selling to Vito. You know, these old school guys, their stuff works. It always works because we as humans have not changed. So yes, technology is different. Our approaches are going to be different because of smartphones and text and social media. But at its core, how to get somebody's attention, how to steer the conversation is fundamental. So I like having these guys on. So you're in for a treat. He tells some good stories. But, he's still in the game, still getting after it and writing books and helping others grow. And he doesn't have to, right? This guy, he can retire. Jim can go do what he wants. And what he wants to do is help people sell. So it's a good approach. It's an honest approach. This servant mentality. Zig Ziglar always said you can get whatever you want if you help enough people get what they want. That's always been the case for professional salespeople. That's what separates you from the rest. So while everybody else is playing games and screen scraping and merging and blasting, you taking the time to personalize something, get to know somebody, it will pay dividends for you. Okay. So enjoy this episode. If there's something you need help with, hit me up. Okay. thesaleswhisperer.com. Hit the contact us. Get the on-demand content. Still got the promo code WEDDING at makeeverysale.com. And then if you need some one-on-one help, just go to the contact us. We'll figure out a way to work together. Okay. Knock that out and then come back and listen to this episode with Jim. Jim Doyle, author, speaker, servantsellingbook.com. You're braving the falling iguanas. So thank you. Thank you for carving out time to come on the show. How the heck are you?
I'm good. I've actually never seen a falling iguana, but they say that it happens and that they're perfectly fine, that they just fall off in the cold. I live in Florida, for those of you who are missing the reference. And we had a cold week this week. And so they say the iguanas were falling off the tree, but I've never seen one. So I don't believe it.
That's so funny. So, yeah. I was a meteorologist. I guess I have the degree. If I panned my camera over, it's over there on the wall. From Texas A&M. So I love little weather things and having friends all over. I see the posts on Facebook. It's showing the cold. It's like falling iguanas. A friend of mine said, "Yep, we just had one today." It's like, that's the craziest damn thing.
Well, I came out of the TV business, so the meteorologists are the only guys who can be wrong half the time and still keep their jobs. So
we can be wrong all the time. It's awesome.
Right?
I mean, only economists can be more wrong more often, but who was it?
Line about economists have predicted 17 of the last 3 recessions. So.
Yeah, or they've polled like 75% of economists think the Fed will raise interest rates by December, but none of them know which year. Oh my gosh. Was it Nixon or Kissinger or whatever, said, I'm looking for a one-handed economist?
One hand, yeah. And we're dating ourselves, by the way, with that reference. So
hey, I just read a lot of history, man. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not old.
Yes, you do.
I got 2 kids getting married this year. It's like, okay, maybe I am getting older.
I hear
you. And I can't silently sit down or get up like, man. I say it's because of jujitsu, so I have an excuse. Oh man. What is this servant selling? What? Selling with the servant heart? Look, I just want to rip their hearts out and it's attached to the wallet and just take the money and run. Why am I talking to you, man? I don't get it.
I probably should reschedule with another guest.
I don't want some artsy fartsy holding hands kumbaya. I want to just force them to give their money. Maybe that's why we're talking. I need to tone it down a bit in my old age.
No. You know what? Here's the deal. So the first word in the title of this book is selling.
Yes.
This is not a relationship book. This is not a namby-pamby book. This is a book for people who want to sell more.
Yes.
But here's the deal. How do you define a win? That's really the question that we all have to ask ourselves. And for a long time in my career, I defined a win as I made a sale. I closed this guy. And you know what? I've been doing this for a long time. I've been in sales for 50 years this month. And I can get in the car after I close a piece of business, and I'm still going, yes. And I have never lost that. But here's what is the change. And I interviewed 30 plus salespeople for this book, Selling with a Servant Heart. And these people, their success was beyond, every time I get off this phone, I go, oh my gosh, that guy is so successful, or she's amazing. They define win in a different way. Win for them is not making a sale. Win for them is when they can make a difference for the customer. And guess what? If you do that enough, you're going to sell more than you can possibly imagine, and you'll become a high achiever.
Yeah, it's the old adage, right? Find a need and fill it, huh?
Right. Well, and I think isn't that always what great salespeople do? Is they? I think if you said what's the fundamental difference between great salespeople and below average, it's how much time they spend in diagnosis. I find that the below average and average salespeople are asking 3 questions and then moving to here's what I've got for you. And the high achieving salespeople, they spend a lot more time in diagnosis. They really are so zeroed in questioning, but questioning is not just enough. That's not enough. It's acute listening, and it's the responsibility of, I love acute listening as a term. Rory Vaden, who I interviewed for this book, a colleague of mine in the National Speakers Association, he said, you got to listen like if you were in a crowded room and you could hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
And, you and I were talking about this beforehand. I think most people tend to be thinking about their next question before they even hear the answer.
Yeah.
And I find that acute listening, but then the partner to acute listening is having good questions and being prepared with questions. Again, that's one of the things I think that distinguishes the high achievers from some who are just average is they're more prepared.
Yeah, don't wing it, huh?
The last 4 or 5 years that I was training in front of groups every week, that became, I used to say the wing it days are over. And I was pissed because I was good at wing it. I was extraordinary at it. What are you going to sell this guy? I don't know. I'll figure it out by the time we get there. But you know what? Today, that customer, all the things that I used to train salespeople to ask for questions, you better know before you walk in the door, because it's all so easily accessible today, with all the online tools that we have. But so, yeah, the wing it days are over.
Yeah. So your episode is going to be, it should be 547, give or take. I had Rory on episode 73.
You had Rory on, you had Shep Hyken on, you got all my buddies to hang out with. You hang out with a lot of my buddies.
Do you know, have you heard of Ben Gay III?
No.
So I'm about to publish him. He was personally mentored for 2 years by Napoleon Hill.
Oh, wow.
And he was Zig Ziglar's boss.
Wow.
So I just spoke with him. So that was
how old a gentleman is he?
He'll be 80 this August.
Wow.
He's still in the game.
Zig was speaking for a long time, so he must have been Zig's boss early in his career.
Well, so he was 18 years younger than Zig. So they had some ego back in the day. So he talked about it, but they were friends, but he would pick on each other a little bit.
I had the privilege of meeting Zig, as a lot of us did in the National Speakers Association, and he had a great line. He said the biggest issue that speakers and trainers get into is not walking their own talk.
Yeah.
You know,
got to be a product of the product.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I took back at the end of 05, I signed up for a 12-week teleclass, and it didn't start till like April, but they truly had limited seating, and I knew the guy putting it on, and he was bringing in this sales trainer. And so I wanted to be in it. And I'd made at least $100,000 in sales since 98, 99.
Right.
So, I was quote unquote successful, still young. But this 12-week teleclass, I ended up becoming a licensee of this guy. We're still friends to this day. But that's when he drove that point home. Be a product of the product. Stop reinventing the wheel. Stop trying to be so creative. If you have a proven plan, work the plan.
Right.
And man, it just freed me up. Like just do what works, and kind of innovate around the edges. But I never changed the core of what I did.
Yeah, a friend of mine said to me one day, I was asking why he thought he was successful. He said, it's right on the back of the shampoo bottle. I said, what do you mean? He said, lather, rinse, and repeat. And I think it's the repeat part that really is significant.
Yep. I remember Zig would always talk about, he'd say, people pick on him. Zig, you think that all motivation, happy talk, blah, blah, blah. You think all that stuff doesn't work? He's like, well, neither does bathing. That's why I recommend you do it often. Like, yeah. All right. That'll work.
Yeah, I loved Zig.
So you said what? You took on, you interviewed 30 salespeople for the book?
We did, 30 interviews, 20 different industries. Part of the reason was that I'd spent the last 30 years training people who sold advertising. And so I retired from the company I founded about a year and a half ago, hired a great CEO. And so I wanted to continue to speak and make a difference. And so I wanted to see if the ideas and things people I'd learned from, if you could replicate them. And I'll tell you, some of the stories were amazing. A woman who, out of 4,500 real estate agents in Sarasota, Manatee County, is number 6, doing $80 million a year in volume, $100 million this last year. A guy who sells more RVs as one person. He does more dollar volume than probably 90% of the RV stores in America. And he, how'd you like to be, Wes? 60% of your business every year is repeat and 30% is referral. When you do that, you start with a pretty good base to grow every year. Customers who adore this guy, just love him. A guy who transformed an insurance agency and did something as a small town insurance agent that just blew me away. I wanted him to move to Sarasota so he could handle my business. Split his customer service team into a red, green, and a blue team. The red team takes inbound calls like every other insurance agency. The blue team is shopping your policy in advance and calling you, saying, hey, Wes, your renewal's coming up next month. I found another carrier. We can get you the same coverage, but it can cost you about 12% less. How do you feel about a company that's providing that level of commitment to their customers? I don't think you're leaving for Geico. You know what I mean? I think you're going to be loyal. So it was those kinds of high achievers. Rory Vaden's wife, when I interviewed Rory, he said the best salesperson I've ever met is my wife, AJ. She is amazing. She was selling $200,000 and $300,000 consulting deals when she was still in her 20s to companies like Bridgestone and Toyota. So it was an impressive group. Every time I got off the phone, I was like, wow. That was just like, wow, because I like to hang around with high achievers.
Yeah. And
this was a group, but the way they got there was different. The way they got there was by saying, by being obsessed by, can I make it right for the customer, by the outcome for the customer.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because people ask, they act like they're mystified by sales. And when I tell people, like my first paying customer in sales training back in, it was late '06, early '07, late '06 actually, I think. But was an architect that was leaving the firm to go out on his own. And I helped him get out there and make it happen by giving him a system, right? It's like people are so predictable, and like we act like there's this big mystique, but it's like, if I just start off and go, well, Jim, that's the ugliest shirt I've ever seen. Why'd you pick that shirt? I mean, did you get it from the Goodwill? That's terrible. I kind of can predict how you're going to react. Huh? Or it's like, hey, I love your office. Yeah. Or like, I love your office. I love the picture. I love the framing. Like, and actually, what is that an old radio over your left shoulder?
That is an old radio. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So I'm like, what is that? That is awesome. I love those. I have the same passion. I probably know how you're going to respond there. So, I mean, people are predictable if we take the time to learn how to read them, how to start things off in our favor. But like you said, I think too many of us just wing it, huh?
Well, the other thing that thought triggers in me, I don't know about you, but I think about my kids. I think about others I've met who reject the idea of sales because they have been offended or seen the stereotype. And I don't know about you, the people I admire who sell, they're the antithesis of the stereotype. So yes, they learn how to make connection, and they do know how to do that. But they also see selling as service, and so they find incredible joy in what they do. And I part of my mission, I think, in this book is to just say, there's a path to a career that you'll make more money in than you ever could make anyplace else. I mean, I'm a college flunk-out. The only academic credential I have is I flunked out of a good school. I mean, some of y'all flunked out of crappy schools, but I flunked out of a good one. And yet I've had a life that, is beyond anything I could dream because I learned how to be effective in sales. And yet we have a lot of people who just don't even think that's an option for them today. And, that I think maybe is something that we should all be working on as sales trainers. Show you a different way of how you win.
Yeah. And especially with entrepreneurs, I try to inspire them to embrace sales, right? Because it's all sales and marketing. I mean, there's a million better mousetraps that just never made it because they couldn't take it to market, couldn't sell the concept. The old adage, when you're on your own, it's like, if you don't toot your own horn, then there's no music.
It's a great line.
Yeah. But we're raised with, don't brag about yourself. Don't, ask about the other person, but when you're on your own, you got to get out there. And that's all, marketing and sales. I always say marketing is just selling in print, right? It's two sides of the same coin, but entrepreneurs, especially inventors, creative types, they just, probably because they've been bullied or hard closed, or I'm not a salesperson.
Right.
We're all in sales.
Well, and I think if you can't get comfortable in that role and you're an entrepreneur, I find that it's very, very difficult to be successful in a business if you don't see yourself as the chief revenue officer in addition to the entrepreneur, because you can't hire anybody who's ever going to work as hard or be as passionate as you are about your product or about what you're doing. Especially when you're in a new startup phase. I could not agree with that more.
Yeah, and I love the stories that you're pulling out of people in your book, and especially like the RV guy, because I think the difference between a professional and an amateur, is the amateur just goes for the sale. They think their job is just to win the sale. It's like an expert. From the very beginning, they're thinking, what can I do to get the fifth sale from this person?
Right. And it's interesting because those are the people I interviewed. Almost everybody I interviewed was in businesses that were not transaction based, but really had long-term potential. And, I was working with a business group on a webinar last week, and entrepreneurs, a lot of startups, and you start to say, okay, what's the lifetime value of a customer? So, people don't do that math. Taco Bell, an average purchase at Taco Bell is $5. But you go to Google and you Google lifetime value of a Taco Bell customer, and it's $11,000. So that's a lot of visits. What happens if you see me walking in the door as $11,000 walking in as opposed to $5? Would that change the way you treat me? Would it change the way you respond? Would it change the way that you invested if there was a problem? Because all of a sudden it's not a $5 customer walking out, that's an $11,000 customer that's walking out the door. And so lifetime value of a customer, to your point, is that repeat business. It's the fifth sale that's going to cause me. And that's so much more profitable and so much less time involved. And yet so many people don't get to the fifth sale because they undersold the first time, or they didn't provide the solution and really help out.
Yeah.
Man, you've got me on a soapbox. Man, I got to calm down here. The coffee.
That's what I do. I'm the Oprah of sales podcast interviews.
The coffee has kicked in, and you've got me just wound up.
You better get a tissue. I'm gonna have you crying about the next 5 minutes. You've been warned.
I love it.
Oh, so it's interesting you bring up Taco Bell. This guy I've known for years. Actually, the guy that got me that I got the 12-week teleclass I bought from. His name is Roy Williams, the Wizard of Ads down in Austin.
I know Roy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
a great guy, right?
I used to speak. We spoke at all the same conferences in the radio business days when I was.
Oh, yeah, he is.
When I started out, I was doing a lot more radio stuff, and he's a great guy. He's a smart guy.
Yeah, I mean, I was living in Austin, and I would go to his free Friday monthly thing when he was still in the strip mall in Buda, Texas. Right now, he's got this beautiful campus, and but he was talking about back in the day the Yo Quiero Taco Bell, right? The little Chihuahua.
Oh yeah.
And he said sold a lot of Chihuahuas. He said it didn't move the needle on their food sales.
Right.
And he really drove home that point of like creative versus discipline. Like, what we can get too cute trying to reinvent the wheel, right? Because I don't know, we get bored, right? As entrepreneurs, as salespeople, we want to put our own spin on something, come up with the next greatest process. It's like, I don't know if it works.
There's an ad agency that years ago had a slogan that said, "It's only creative if it sells."
Yeah.
And I've always believed in that principle. Something can be cute, can win all the awards in the world, but if it doesn't move the needle for sales, that was not a good ad. So I don't care where it's delivered. So
yeah, I've never been in that world, right? But I follow it, and the fact that ad agencies like have their own awards ceremonies and dinners, I'm like, what in the heck does that mean?
I like your ad. If you like mine, let's give each other an award.
Yeah, let's all get in the tuxedo, and I mean, like, whatever, dude.
The classic example of that is, every year we have the Super Bowl, and so in the Super Bowl, now we preview the ads 2 weeks in advance. We have all these polls the next day. Which ones did you like? And the ones you're going to like are the ones that make you cry, make you laugh, or make you want to hug your sweetie. And they'll win all those awards, and everybody will say that's the best ad in the Super Bowl. And then 3 months later, what do you remember? The gun fired at the master lock. I mean, the one that was the plainest, simplest ad going is the one that everybody remembers. That only ran, by the way, for a number of years, one time a year in that Super Bowl, and you can still see that ad today. That'll be the one that sells, and the creative ones will win awards.
Yeah, that is a great ad, though. I remember that.
Yeah, so we continue to date ourselves.
Yeah, hey, that means we know what the heck's going on.
I don't know about that.
I love the guy. Have you seen Will It Blend?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, that's a great story. The big blend tech, like the Vitamix, kind of the big mega blenders, people can use at home.
Yeah.
So I think he like taken over the company, maybe bought it. I forget exactly, but I think he's the owner. Uh, and he brought in a marketing person or company, and they were trying to find out, like the angle. And they go in the lab and they've got one of their blend techs, and like they're shoving broom handles and just all kind of crap. And they're like, "What are you doing?" They're like, "We're stress testing it, right?" It's like it's what we do. They're like, "That's the ad." Right. Like, what? So this guy wears a lab coat or puts his goggles on. Man, they get iPhones, they get golf balls, they just and it's literally the website. Let me confirm it. Right. I think it redirects to their YouTube channel. Will it blend? Is it not coming up? What's up? Will it blend? Probably did a typo. Oh, but it's fantastic. And so they started sharing that.
Boom.
They took, so you just Google "will it blend," boom, it pops up.
I'll do it. Yeah.
I don't know what the URL. I thought it was willitblend.com, but yeah, he throws in an iPad, iPhone X, and Amazon Echo. And dude, I haven't seen it fail yet. So now hey, I got this super strong thing. All right, it'll chop up my ice and frozen strawberries when I make a smoothie.
Yeah.
Right. And we've had it for years. And I always tell people we have to buy industrial strength everything in my house. On a typical day, 15 people come through my house on an average day. My in-laws live close, boyfriends, girlfriends, cousins, neighbors next door. At least 15 people come through my house. Yeah. So microwaves, refrigerator doors, every remote controls, everything's being mashed and smashed and closed. And
so it says everything about you guys that everybody wants to be there. So that's a cool thing. So
yeah. So that's good too, but so I'm looking for good stuff.
Yeah.
But it was right under their nose. They were already doing it. Right. Like how all these great salespeople you interviewed, what would you say, like unconscious, the unconscious competent, obviously they get to a point where they are doing it, but were they consciously trying to grow and improve? Did they stumble upon greatness and then kind of stuck with it? You see what I'm saying? Like how many of them were intentional to get there versus, talent versus effort, I guess you will.
Well, that's a really good question. So there are probably two things that I would say to answer that. One is that it was surprising the number of people who I interviewed for the book who said that this was not their default, that they were, and I think I was probably that way, sort of the customers got my money and I got to get my money early in the stage of my career. And that was particularly true, by the way, for men. More of the men seemed to say that was not their default than the women. And one of the researchers we interviewed said, guys, especially when they're younger, have this sort of testosterone-fueled desire to win. And he said sometimes they'll mature out of that. And I think when they mature out of that, that's the point at which they begin to define win in a different way. Win is serve. Win is make sure the customer gets what they need, not necessarily make a sale. But the other thing, to your point, this is a group of one of the 10 lessons in the book is to never stop learning, because I really find that the people in this group, they were asking me questions. And I tell a story in the book about a car dealer. I was speaking in Des Moines, and he was coming to a seminar I was doing the next morning, and they asked me if I'd have dinner with him. His name is Stu Hansen. He was at that time, he was the number 2 or 3 Dodge dealer in the entire country. And I like hanging out with successful people. And so I said, man, I would love to have dinner with him. So we have dinner, and in the course of the conversation, he tells me that he had just turned down an amount of money to sell his stores that was, beyond anything that you and I could have ever dreamed of. And those stores have that kind of value because he's made a lot of money at them for a lot of years. Well, who's the guy at 7:30 the next morning that's sitting in the front row, who's taking more notes than anybody in that entire room, who's the first guy that's up to me, after the session's over with a question, clarify this, help me understand that better. A conference call with his ad agency a week and a half later so I could go over something that we talked about is Stu Hansen. That to me is the epitome of what successful people do. Successful people realize that if I'm good today, there's no guarantee. If the world is changing as fast as it's changing and I stay the same, I'm going backwards.
Amen. Hell, just look at interest rates, right?
Yeah.
If you're earning 0.01% in your savings account while inflation's 7%,
you're going backwards. And so if I don't grow and I don't continue to learn and I don't continue to try to develop, and the world gets tougher and more competitive in the business that you serve, you're going backwards. Mm-hmm. And I can't afford to go backwards. I love your sentence about today is my day and my goals are bigger than me, or goals are even bigger than me. Well, you're not going to accomplish those goals by being the same guy you are today.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the adage? You can't solve the problems with the same mindset that created them.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite lines for successful people is being successful only means you were right once. Because I think sometimes when we've had some success, we tend to think we have guru properties and, that somehow I've been endowed with genius because I had one success. And, I'm not sure that that's necessarily true.
Yeah, that's, amen. You got to, I always say, success takes daily effort, but failure just needs one good excuse and you can use that for the rest of your life.
Right, yeah. Well,
right? Come on, man.
But people say you pay the price for success, but in my life it's been failure that was costly. So
yeah, either you're going to pay either way, right? For success or failure.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I just assume not go back and go through those things again. So
yeah, it's interesting that story about Stu, because I feel like we've been lied to as a society, and I don't know quite where it comes from, but the old, golden years and, hey, just work hard and then, you'll have some savings and you can just sit on the front porch. And I'm like, I believe we were made by God to work, now, not necessarily grind yourself to the nub, but even like Adam and Eve, they had to take care of the garden, right? He didn't set them up in a hammock and said, hey, eat some fruit and have sex. It's like tend the garden. And I think people like, oh, I haven't made it unless I'm sitting on a beach doing nothing. And I'm like, that's just, to me, that just seems so unappealing.
Well, I think one of my favorite lines, I'll be 72. And one of my favorite lines is, I would rather wear out than rust out. I believe very, very strongly, plus I suck at golf, so that makes the choices easier. So I enthusiastically suck at golf, but I don't want to suck at golf 5 days a week. And there's only so many conversations I can have about how the Red Sox are doing in any year. I had a guy, I wrote an article about this years ago. He was a Hertz driver in New Orleans. He was an older gentleman, probably in his 70s. And he was the guy who, you travel a lot in your work as I did. He said he got off the bus and walked across the parking lot to help people with their luggage, and then carried their luggage back in. And when they offered him a tip, he said, no, thank you. This is what I do. And I said to him, wow. I said, you're amazing. He said, work is like my vitamins. And, I think you're right. I mean, I think so many people, retire, and I don't know, whine about the world and talk about how bad things are. And that's okay. Everybody's got a right to do that. I'd like to keep going and serve as long as I could, but not necessarily just for money. One of my favorite books, Bob Buford wrote a book called Halftime. And in Halftime, he talked about the difference between moving from success to significance. And, so I've been blessed to have a lot of success. I also want to see how I can make a difference. So I don't need to necessarily work in a full-time job anymore, but I need to do stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Get out there and be productive. And maybe that's the time that you can truly give back, right? It's like you can consult, you can give your time for free, or, like, okay, I'll finally let you buy me that cup of coffee, right? Because let me buy a cup of coffee and pick your brain. It's like, hey, why don't you pay my consulting rate and I'll buy the coffee?
Yeah, but now I'm like, sure.
Yeah, but now you can, right?
Sure.
Like, I got 2 weddings to pay for. I got
exactly.
I got 3.5 kids to finish college. I mean, like, I'll bring my own coffee. How about that?
I had a wedding. I was a late dad, so I had a wedding a year and a half ago, and my daughter wanted to get married in Washington, D.C. on New Year's Eve, because all the other places and all the other towns and all the other dates were cheaper. We couldn't have that. We had to have Washington, D.C. on New Year's Eve. So I was trying to work with the event manager at the hotel, because I book events all over the country and I know all about this stuff. And I hung up from the phone call, called my daughter, and I said, "It's lucky after this call I didn't end up paying more." this young salesperson, she put me to sleep. I thought I knew about negotiations. I thought I trained on negotiations, and she put me to sleep, because when you have the power, it's New Year's Eve. Mr. Doyle, we'd be happy to lower the price for that if you wanted to move to another date.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, you got to know your value.
Yeah, but she knew her value. She knew her value.
I had a call before this, and helping a guy through that. He's in a negotiation with a merger, and one of the earliest classes that I took was on negotiation. Do you remember the Chester Karras negotiation?
I went to that as well. They used to travel all over the country and do those one-day seminars.
Yeah.
In all the airline magazines, right?
All the airline magazines. That's where I saw them. I'm flying all the time. And I convinced my boss back then to pay for it. I was living in Austin. And this was like 2002, roughly. It was like a $2,500 course. And it was 2 days down in San Antonio. I drove down. And I remember they were talking about how, buyers go to negotiation class. So you better get good at negotiation as well. But they helped me see things from the perspective of the buyer. And to realize they're under pressure too, quite often.
Right.
They've got to fill the room. They've got to get these orders processed. They need the raw materials. They need the test equipment. I was selling test equipment back then. I was like, oh man. And like the very next week, one of my long-term clients, it was Southwestern Bell and their labs back then. And they were right in a nice bougie part of Austin, very expensive. The guy says, "Hey, I need one of your new fandangled widgets." Right. And I knew they already had one. I knew they were standardized on us. It was the cream of the crop. It was $50,000 list price. And he asked, could I do any better on the price? And he wasn't pushy about it. And, I was still young and new. And I was like, before then I would have like gone and asked for 10%, because that was easy. They'd always approved 10%. And I think I could even give 10% without asking. And I just, after that class, like, no, we can't right now. They're just, they are kind of in demand and lead times, blah, blah. And it was all true. He's like, okay, no problem. Yeah. And he placed the full order. And I called my boss. I'm like, we just got a 200% ROI on my class. Right. Because I would have given a $5,000 concession.
Right.
But and it was one of the first times that I made a big sale and didn't feel guilty about it.
Right.
If that makes sense. Right. Because I could have given, but he didn't need it. It's not his own money. It's still valuable. We have great service. I was like, oh man, this stuff works.
You're the standard. You were the standard in this company for a reason. So,
right.
I think so. I don't know if it was the Karras class or another negotiation class or something I went to, where the instructor had this great line that I've never forgotten. He said, your job is to determine power. Who's got the power in this negotiation? But then he said, and then act like you have none. So in other words, don't come at it from an arrogant point of view. What you figured out was you had power in that negotiation. He was the approved choice. They liked your product in advance. You were the sort of the standard. In my negotiation with the hotel in DC, I have no power. I have no power. She has all the power because it's my daughter and it's the date that she wants and the place that she wants. And it's like, so all she had to do was be nice and be polite and do what you did, which is to say, there's a lot of demand. The lead times are tough. So I love the line, determine power in a negotiation, but then act like you have.
Yeah. Yeah. And I assume she at least was sweet about it, right? She didn't cram it down your throat.
Very.
Yeah.
And that's the, so come at it from a humble point of view and come at it. Don't try to be arrogant because you know what happens if you said to the guy, no, that's it, take it or leave it. I don't know about you, but there's a chance with me, if you'd said that to me, I'd be like, okay, I'll leave it.
Or you're stuck with it, but it begins the process of pulling away.
Yeah, exactly. But what you did was you did it in a way that was, you gave them a reason why you couldn't do it. There's a lot of demand, high lead times. And so you did it in a very appropriate way. That's the acting like you have none. Which I think that's important. And that's not in any book I've written, but I think it's consistent with what, selling with a servant heart people would do.
And I think what I was able to do was get him some loaner equipment and not charge for it. So he felt like for that gap. And so I massaged it. And so he was thrilled because I didn't want him to think I was bullying, right? I mean, because I was aware of it even back then, 20 years ago. It's like, I got to leave a good taste in his mouth, right, from this whole thing. And
exactly.
Because that was no margin, right? We already had demo equipment. Those things were already floating around and they could be used for that purpose. But we could charge for it. This was an elite piece of equipment that we could charge even for loaners.
But you added value. You just added value to the process in a way that was profitable for you guys.
So, and he was a good customer for a long, long time. And we stayed in touch even after I left the company. So it was a good dude. It worked out. So where do we get your book? You've got a website, huh?
I had a website. So the book is on Amazon for all the salespeople on there. It's Audible as well. And most of our salespeople are probably using Audible and listening between calls. But the hardcover and Kindle versions there as well. And then there's a free excerpt on the website, which is servantsellingbook.com.
Servantsellingbook.com. Amen.
Thank you for the plug.
Yeah. Well, good old Zig, right? You can get whatever you want if you help enough people get what they want.
Well, you're terrific, and what a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for carving out some time, braving the iguanas. Talking about being dressed right before the call, and I saw a company said they're coming back to the office. They said come to the office dressed like you were for Zoom calls, and everybody, men and women, right, like blouses and suits and ties on the top, and they were all in shorts and flip flops at the office, right? It's
what a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, it's also the one cartoon is that, to the left or the right of my Zoom shot is clutter, chaos.
Oh my gosh. I got this. The bookshelf is decent, but I got so many books that are on the floor. I mean, my wife's like, okay, where's the camera? Let's make sure this wall looks good.
I just moved into a new space, and so we had to declutter the Zoom shot. So
yeah, but I mean, either way works, right? Whatever. Like, I don't know. I used to have my library, bookshelf behind me, and I changed room with kids moving around, right? I used to be downstairs. How about, like, you probably hear the barking. I'm constantly hitting mute because they're playing with the dog. But I was downstairs right by the front door, kids coming in, screen door slamming, dog barking, and good grief now, Amazon and whatever.
Oh, no, yeah.
I mean, there's so many deliveries. I'm like, what is going on? My wife's like, don't ask. And now, with wedding, forget about it. They're trying on dresses. I just lock myself upstairs in the room and I sneak out and go choke people and then come back home.
So are the both of the weddings daughters?
No, my second son and my first daughter.
So you're you are going to at least have to save up a little bit, take back all your returnables and.
Oh my gosh, I'm donating plasma. I'm collecting cans, and I mean whatever it takes. I get to use my truck now. Go out at night. I steal lumber. I mean, look, it's a wedding. Yeah. I got to do what I got to. These are desperate times. Yeah. Told all my kids. We were talking about this yesterday in an interview. I said that the 5-second rule when you drop food is now 10 seconds. We're not wasting anything.
That's fabulous. What a great line. I love that. And of course, you can act like you have a vote, but you don't have a vote because you have a wife and a daughter. So you have no vote.
You talk about great salespeople, like that guy's wife. Was it Rory's wife? You said was the great.
AJ. Yeah.
My wife. She's a machine. I walk around the counter and I hug the salesperson. I'm like, it's going to be okay, but this is going to hurt for a minute. So just, but I'm here. I know that's my wife, but I'm in solidarity with you. This is going to be hard, my friend. You're going to lose this deal. So just get it done quick. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. Just meet her demands and we'll speak highly of you online. Or don't you the sales whisperer? I ain't got nothing on her, man.
That's right. That's the velvet hammer.
Salespeople, we're the easiest people to close. I'm like, I like the guy. I'll just buy it. My wife's like, leave the room, honey. I got 30% off. Like, they already gave us 30% off. I got 30 more. You're like, what?
Yeah. Isn't that great, though?
So, yeah. And unfortunately, our kids are pretty frugal too. So it's
oh, that's great. When are the weddings?
June and September.
Oh wow.
The son is in June. The daughter's in September. Yeah. They got engaged 3 days apart, like 69 hours apart over Christmas.
Oh wow. How cool.
And neither of them knew, right? They both obviously knew the other, like had a significant other. But my son, he dated his girlfriend for 6 years, like since high school. So they've already known. We knew that was coming. It was just a matter of when. So my daughter, it's kind of quick, but they've dated for a while.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah. Well, we have a big old blended family because I got married after the Baton Rouge girlfriend. I got married to. Hopefully that's not on the tape. I'll talk about that. But we got very late in life, and so but all the kids get along great. So we're blowing our brains out and taking everybody to Italy for a week. So we get June. So that's going to cost me a small wedding. So
yeah, when my oldest graduated high school, we all went to Hawaii.
Oh
my goodness. 2 of everything, 2 rental cars,
sure,
2 hotel rooms,
Oh, sure. Right. Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. But, that's the kind of things that better to spend money on experiences than anything else.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Anything else. So
for sure. Well, thank you, sir. I will let you know.
Thank you so much. I really have enjoyed the time. You're great. I love it. Good questions and a lot of fun and a lot of laughs. So
all right. Thank you, sir.
I like the 10-second rule. The 10-second rule will be stolen and used again. So
amen.
All right.
Spread the news.
Thank you so very much, Wes. What a privilege to spend time with you.
All right. Good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
So many of these great sales trainers and entrepreneurs are college dropouts or never went. I've had 4 or 5 guys who went to prison. Just get after it. Pull on that string, see where it goes, follow that vein. Understand that the the manner in which, and the consistency with which you invest in yourself is all that matters. A friend of mine here in town in Murrieta, she's had her business way before I got started. And I remember she was always beating up on herself because she didn't go to college. And it's like, I had no idea. I didn't care either way. All I knew is she had a successful business. And, she would offer her conference room for us. We had some networking meetings back in the day. And I'm looking around, I'm impressed. But here she was beating herself up over this. Now, big companies like Google, Apple, the big accounting or consulting firms, they don't even ask for college degrees. So, invest in yourself. Understand that regardless of your business, sales and marketing is fundamental. You can outsource some of the nitty-gritty stuff, building of landing pages and funnels and retargeting pixels and all that crap, but you still need to understand how those work. You need to set the tone and the pace. It's your voice that comes out in the messaging. You need to own all of your marketing. I see this all the time. People, they don't even own their own websites, and it's crazy. And you part ways with that marketing person, they own your website. So just be careful of that. You need to understand the value that they bring and understand the risk. I'm actually talking with a guy to do our own CRM, our own full done-for-you service. And we will own everything. Okay? But there are certain people that's a fit for. All right? Certain types of trades, certain aptitude of people, certain size companies. These would be smaller companies where the owners are just not going to do this stuff ever. And they're getting hosed by signing onerous contracts with consulting agencies that are taking you to the cleaners. So, I've never done a full done-for-you offering. I've never offered it because it's too hard to manage with the tools that were available. When I got started with this in 2007 and 8, and I wasn't wired that way. I'm knocking on 52 now, a little more patient, a little more methodical, and I found some capable, competent people that can get the job done and have a positive ROI. But again, the number of people we can do a full done-for-you service is minuscule compared to those that I've traditionally done where I just help you learn this and master it. But part of the reason that's leading me towards this is experience with a couple of clients right now that mean well, that have thriving businesses, okay? And they purchased software before they found me, and they needed help. And then as I dive in, they're not using the software properly. They're paying through the nose to other consultants for Facebook ads and other types of marketing. And the software they're paying for is not set up properly. In one case, it literally wasn't running. The contacts were coming in from a third-party source and were literally being marked as unmarketable. And they only had one little minuscule automation or workflow running anyway. So it really wasn't that big a deal. But the fact they hadn't set anything up in 18 months is the big deal. They should have had several detailed, fine-tuned, multimedia, multi-step sequences running. Round-robin lead assignment to the salespeople, immediate correspondence with the prospects, immediate upsells, or at least additional offers to learn more or engage more, even if are not spending money, right? You can generate a lead, take them to a thank you page, offer a more detailed report in exchange for additional information, or maybe make a small sale. So there's pros and cons to each, but they should have had all of that built and running, and they didn't. And they still doubled their sales last year. And they're on track to double sales this year. Obviously, they're doing well. But maybe they could have tripled sales. I bet they could have tripled sales last year and could triple sales this year if they had this stuff built out and running. So now we've wasted 2 months with this new client. The guy means well. He's just swamped. He just hired somebody, introduced us 6 days ago. The new guy still hadn't gotten in touch with me. So meanwhile, they're paying me for 90 days. And, hey, usually I'll extend it a little bit for companies if they just get swamped. But I don't have to, right? But again, I'm just telling you this because that's what's forcing me to look at what's going on in the market and say, you know what, maybe some people need to just hand this stuff off. But again, there's pros and cons to everything. But you need to understand your personality type and what happens when you build your marketing on assets you don't own. If you're solely dependent on things coming from Facebook or from Instagram or Snapchat, those platforms can be shut down. They can shut you down for any reason, any time, with no warning and no retribution. Okay, so what are you doing to pull these contacts off of those platforms into your own database and dripping on these people until they buy or die? That's the way you need to be thinking. Okay, that's what I can help you do, either through the on-demand training, if you want to learn to do it yourself, or if you want me to help you do it, hit me up, okay, thesaleswhisperer.com, go to the contact us, and let's talk. You got to get this stuff dialed in. It's a crazy world. It's only getting crazier. So put some crazy marketing out there so you can dominate. Automate, integrate, and dominate. You feel me? I'll go sell something.